Hola, Piloncillos. Hello to everyone that is catching this on the feed. Happy that you're all joining us here today. We have a great plática organized here for you. We're going to have Maricela Rosales join us here in a moment, and we're going to be really diving into the topic of embodying your work and how to prevent burnout. And so I'm excited for you all to be here. So, hope that you're all doing well. Let us know in the comments where you are joining us from. Can you hear me also, by the way? Hi,
Hi.
¿cómo estás?
Bien, bien. How are you?
I'm good. I'm excited about today.
Yeah, me too.
Mhm. Well, so here we have Maricela Rosales just joined us. Would you mind giving us a little bit more information about yourself, what you do, what your work is about, and also what you're doing for yourself?
Yeah. So I'm Maricela Rosales. I'm a first gen Latina Chicana from Los Angeles, California. Still live out here in the Los Angeles area. I'm in Whittier, practicing in Whittier too. And I'm a licensed clinical social worker. So I'm a licensed therapist and coach, a Reiki master, and just interested in all things that are like nature and, you know, reconnecting to like all of the cultural ways of like just bringing wellness into our lives. Since the pandemic, I've been working remotely. So all of my offers are virtual, which is nice because I can reach a lot more people. For therapy, it's across California. So it doesn't matter where you are. All the other offerings came to be because with therapy, I can only see people in California. So with the other offerings, you can be anywhere. One of the primary ways that I practice comes from finding what I needed to heal my anxiety, especially during the pandemic. So, things that I do for me is a lot of working with my body. So, whether that's walking barefoot on the grass, like every morning, or being in the sun, nature walks, but also the somatic practices that I teach my clients, they're the things I do every single day. So, moving my body, breathing, all of that, all of those things. So,
Thank you so much
yeah,
for sharing.
you're welcome.
Would you mind expanding a little bit on the word in somatic? I
Somatic.
think, yeah, there might
Mm,
be some people out here that
mm.
don't
Yeah,
know or unfamiliar.
yeah. And it's a word I think that's really popular right now that we are hearing a lot, but yeah, that's true. We may not know. So the word soma means the living organism. We tend to hear somatic or soma and think it just means body, but it actually means the entire organism in its living form. So it's not just your body, it's also your mind. Your mind is part of your body, right? Your mind, your body, your energy, your spirit. It's all of you put together. So, somatic work or somatic practices or anything that's going to bring you back into bringing the entire being of who you are, your vessel, back to life, feeling alive.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I didn't know that that's what it was referring to, specifically the organism, which is lovely. I think we forget that we really are organisms. We're so disconnected from I guess, even our own lives or the animal body
Mm-hmm.
animal body that we all have. So I think that's great work. So let's dive into our topic today because we have, I mean, just we for those watching, we met previously and sort of had a little bit of a discussion what we were going to talk about, and so this topic really took hold of our conversation. So we have a lot to say. So I'm excited to dive into this. Would you like to, I guess, give a little bit of a teaser or an idea of how we even arrived at this topic, or why you think this topic is important? Or diving in even into the word of embodied and what that means, because we're going to be talking a lot about embodiment today. And I guess even I addressing the people to whom this conversation is pertinent for, so we have a number of different people on here today. And so, yeah, I want to express that how this can be connected.
Yes. And I think when we met, we initially said, let's talk about how we can help people come back into their bodies. And then just even that statement threw us in like 500 different ways, right? Like what does that even mean to be in your body? And I think what we started talking about was just the language that and you and I have talked about this a lot, like that psycho speak, or I don't know how to say it, right? But these terms, like even somatic, right? These terms that are thrown out there and used so much, but we may not necessarily know exactly what it means. And then maybe we're like learning things or doing things, but it's not real deep because we don't have a full understanding of exactly what it is that we're doing, right? So I think this came from how do we support those who are supporting others in healing so that they can take care of themselves. They're in their bodies, but help. Like it goes connected, right? Like how the healer or holder of space, how well they're connected to the medicine and how they're taking care of themselves is only going to influence how well they can help someone else. And if you're the one on the healing side, because I imagine not everybody here is a therapist or some type of holder of space. You can be both, right? So then on the side of receiving, also how embodied, how connected are you? So maybe if we start with embodiment, right? You hear that term a lot. I think one thing I see is missing, like think of the word embodiment, it has the word body in there. So if you're doing anything and the body is not part of it, it's not even close to embodiment.
Right? Exactly.
So the body is part of it. And let me just read to you, just from some of my studies, and the definition that I was given of embodiment is living inside the aliveness of our soma.
Living. Say it one more time.
Yeah. Embodiment is living inside the aliveness of our soma. And remember, soma is your full vessel. So living inside the aliveness. So that means you can't just go to the workshop or the TikTok. We talked about this, right? Like where are people getting info from? It can't just be the workshop, the book, the podcast, the TikTok person. And I read it. I have my notes and it's up here. Your soma is not just your mind. It's not just consuming through a book or hearing the podcast or going to the workshop. It really has to be in all of you. So embodiment would be that there's this awareness. It's part of what you're doing. So I can't just learn, right? Imagine, I don't want to take swimming lessons from someone who doesn't know how to swim. Right? But they read all the books and watched all the videos. Or to learn how to cook from someone that has never been in the kitchen.
It's practice, it's the practice. And we throw around that word too, our practice. This is our practice, but are you really practicing?
Yes.
Are you practicing this in your real life? I think sometimes people, when sort of when you put on your healer's hat, your therapist hat, whatever hat that is, like that's the only time that you practice it. Whatever your tools or your modalities are, but I think once people take off that hat, it all goes out the window.
So then we can explore truly how deep is that practice. If I only think about whatever the tool is, only when I have that customer in front of me.
Yeah. Would you say embodiment is like is taking practice a step further?
Yes. So it has to be, again, so that it's part of who you are. So if I think of like the work that I do, I'm helping people become somebody different. Whether it's therapy or coaching, I'm helping them become somebody different. It isn't sufficient to say, I have this goal, I'm going to be an entrepreneur and start my business. And then I have these 3 steps, right? Or I'm going to be healed. I'm not going to be, bothered by this family member anymore. There's things that you actually have to do so that things change. We can't just say it, right? So the practice has to be deeper. It really is about, how am I bringing this into my day-to-day life? How am I becoming that healer, that therapist? Like, what does it mean? What does it feel like? How do you move? How do you speak? How are you actually guiding others?
Yeah, I think this is, one of the things that came up in our conversation was that these are the things that you're not told in grad school, in your training. How does one approach this now? And how do we remove the shame, out of it, and taking that accountability, really being able to look at ourselves and be like, okay, actually I'm not embodying this practice. I'm not, like, why am I struggling with this thing that I'm trying to help my clients through? Or, there's
Mhm,
that common phrase, I give great advice but don't follow my own advice, kind
mhm,
of,
mhm.
thing. How do we, I guess, address it now, whatever level you are in your practice, and not feel shame about it, because at this point in time, pues ya llegamos, we're here. So what are we going to do about it? So how do we bring it home?
And I think a big part of this, if we look at, so that nobody feels, so we're not going to blame the person and that you don't feel self blame, I think we have to pull that lens out to really look at systems. Because if we just think of like just therapy, if we think of the systems of mental health, they're so broken and we are pushed to practice a certain way. Okay. And so you might be working for an agency that bombards you with work and they just keep piling it on with no regard to you as a human. How are you doing? What support do you need? Because healing work is hard. You are holding space for people's pain, people's trauma. Like, there's no way that that's not going to affect you, right? So, if there's no room for the individual, we, as a new therapist, we are just doing what we're taught. So we're not taught to take care of ourselves. We're not taught to be in our bodies. We're taught to learn the modality and then go out there and crank out your sessions. So from the very beginning, we're taught to disconnect from ourselves in the name of, we're helping the community, right? So yeah, we can't blame ourselves. Like, we're just following the pattern that's set there for us. But I think, for those who are curious or who are like, I'm tired, this isn't working, it's a really good place to pause and think about, what do I need? What do I need so that this work can feel fulfilling and sustainable? And I can actually be a good, healthy guide for the person who's sitting across from me.
I think that's beautiful. I think it's a beautiful place to be. It's unfortunate that the system, especially in when we're talking about a more structured systems like therapy and those paths, it's unfortunate that there isn't that support really there, or that push to take care of the self isn't there. But I do think it's important, and to, I guess, celebrate or acknowledge, that you're able to come to a point and realize, okay, like, I need to do something for myself. I i, I think the next avenue here, because I in my practice, I have encountered a number of different people where, like, okay, like, I need to, this isn't working. And they're almost at a place where they want to throw the whole thing out. What is it? They throw the baby out with the bathwater. Me and I always get them wrong anyway, the Proverbs, but you know what I mean. But they want to throw the baby out, and but it's valuable. I think all our education, all the paths that we take are valuable, and it's not about throwing the whole thing out. So people are now finding themselves at a crossroads of, okay, this isn't working, so what do I do now? So they're seeking outside modalities, now moving into the spiritual spheres, or reconnecting with the cultural aspects, or looking for a more holistic approach. But I do think there's so much that gets lost in what is currently available. It's like a giant a cheese plate. a giant cheese plate of like different potentials. I wanted to say a smoker's, but I can't even say it, so I'm just not gonna try. There's
Smorgasbord.
a word. Yeah, that's it. That's it. It's a smoker, whatever. Of things. That's why I went with cheese plate. Different options of different options, and I think that's when people are just piling things
Yeah.
onto their plate. I think we started to talk about this topic too. They're piling these things onto their plate, and they're taking bits and pieces, but they're not fully embodying that work either. So they're consuming things, and they're back to square one, because when
Yeah.
they're like, "Oh, well, how come it's not working?" That's not the issue. The issue isn't necessarily the modality or the path that you're taking, but whether you're really embodying that work, or what, how do you feel about that?
Yeah, absolutely. Because it's just same problem, but just a different scenery, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's not necessarily about the modality. It's more about, am I connected? Again, it comes back to, am I in my body? Can I be in my body? Can I notice when I'm feeling exhausted or overwhelmed? Can I notice when I'm getting triggered because the whoever I'm sitting across, their situation is triggering memories of my own, right? Because that can happen. That's going to happen. Like whatever is happening, are you fully in your body so that you can notice what's happening, so that you're tending to that too? So it's not just let me keep reading the books, let me keep getting more certifications. Let me also, yeah, let me learn, let me develop those skills, but also simultaneously, how am I tending to me so I can continue doing the work? And that's the hard part. And that's the piece that I think we need more support around.
Yeah.
Right.
I I think it's beautiful that we can connect with individuals and really use our empathy and connect with each other's hearts, but I think that's when the work gets heavy, because how I think a lot of people don't know how to, I guess, put that inner boundary and still make that connection, but not bring that home with you. And I mean, the main topic of this conversation is, how do we prevent that burnout? Because if you're constantly, you're in it, you're in the trenches with an individual, and you're connecting a heart to heart conversation, and how do you like disconnect? I think a lot of people struggle with that and not taking that home.
And that's a whole other, like, that's a whole other plática, right? But those are the skills that we have to learn. It's not just therapy. Because I hear this stuff from, my clientele is so diverse. It could be somebody who's doing limpias and who
Hmm.
feels overwhelmed, but there's pieces missing. So again, it doesn't matter what you're learning. It could be anything. We could even pull it out of, the healing arts. But so if you're just learning the thing and then you're jumping into, like, now I'm offering this thing, but there's disconnection, it's going to disrupt what's happening for you. It doesn't matter what it is, right? So it could be the limpias and you might feel like, well, that's kind of detached. I'm just, using smoke. But
Oh,
there's a whole, like, you can't just learn that by watching the TikTok, right?
yeah,
And
definitely
so
that.
there's things that you have to do so that energetically you are okay while you are like moving big stuff from however many people you're serving. It could be your tarot. It could be whatever, right? So it again, it's going to come back to, like, how are you tending to you and how much are you in your body? And this is hard. Most of society, well, I'm making big assumptions.
Yeah.
Everybody I see is disconnected from their body. Otherwise, I wouldn't have a job, right? That's who comes to me. And that was me too. We're taught to be in our head and to hustle, and there's no room then to notice the butterflies in your stomach or that your heart's beating fast and pause to wonder, what is my body communicating? I have to just keep going. And so we get into this habit of being in, like, that's your embodiment, to be disconnected and be in your head, right? So it's a whole lot of work to come back to, can I be here? Can I slow down?
I think too, when you even just hearing like, oh, it's a whole lot of work. I think that might, it, we talked about using these different modalities to avoid real emotional work, right? And the idea of embodiment, returning back to the body, is hard. Like you're saying, it is hard work, but how do we encourage individuals to make that step? I think first becoming conscious of, yeah, actually, I do need to start to embody this more. I am having issues with the salmedio cracking, or the tarot, or this therapy session is really making a toll on me. Or even coming to the acknowledgement that when we ask ourselves, who are we, where are we, most people will tell you like, oh, where's my soul, my soul's up here. Where are we really? And it is disembodied. I
Mm-hmm.
think there's all people give you all sorts of answers. So I think one is coming to a place of just acknowledging like, okay, this is something I need to work on without the shame, because this is ultimately going to make you a better practitioner, healer, whatever it is that you do. And it's also going to help you live a more fulfilled life. That's ultimately what this is about, is that you're not here to sacrifice yourself and your well-being and the hours of your precious life, to help someone else. We're not martyrs. Okay, yeah.
Yeah, so maybe you can begin with asking yourself, how do I want to feel? And not letting because your brain's going to pop right in and say, no, but it can't happen because this and this and this and this. We're going to tell our mind right now in a second. We'll address that in a second, right? And just letting yourself, don't let the obstacles pop in right away, because we're not problem solving. Just you dreaming for a little moment. How do I want to feel? How do I want to be? And maybe take a breath there and exhale, but really, like to pause and give yourself that space to really think like, how do I want to be? Because I guarantee that 100% of the people who are here live and are going to watch this recording, no one is going to say, I want to feel frazzled, I want to feel like I'm having a heart attack 6 days a week. Like nobody's going to say that, but that's how we're functioning, right? And maybe that's the first place. I don't want to feel like this anymore.
I think there's a lot of people out there that have never known an alternative,
Mm-hmm.
have never known an
Mm-hmm.
alternative, and have come into systems, family systems, the environment, the societal systems, where we know that this current reality is so much about go, 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 consume, 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 you know, live to work. So it's so hard to change that mind frame when the rest of the world is very much on a contrary path to what where we're trying to be.
Mm-hmm. And so maybe, and what I'm suggesting is you're not even changing the mind frame. You're not changing jobs. You're not, uprooting your life, because we're moving that right there quickly, how quickly we move to the future and problem solving, right? To simply just right now acknowledge for yourself how you want to feel. And if it's, I have no idea because all I know is being frazzled,
Mm-hmm.
then you can even say, I don't want to feel frazzled.
Yeah.
Because again, our mind is going to take us to problem solve, and all of us are going to have 1,000 reasons why it can't happen. And so then we stop there, right? Now, is being in your body going to change society? No. But what I'm suggesting is that if you're connected to your body, at least you're going to be able to eventually notice things like, I have to pee and I'm going to go pee,
Yeah.
right?
Or being hungry, being cold,
Yeah.
yeah.
The basics, right? Because as like, maybe it sounds dumb or I don't know, but these are real things that I
They're real
have to
things.
help people. People come to me and these are things I'm helping them with, because there is no sense sometimes of I can tend to myself. So, yeah, I have clients who do not drink water all day long so they don't have to pee or they don't eat all day long, right? Like it's there, and we can see it superficially, but really there's like some deeper shit
Yeah,
happening there, right?
that's
Like
superficial. Yeah.
it's not, but I think, even just noticing our body so that we can pause for a moment. So yeah, I don't want to make this about like you're going to suddenly be doing the bubble baths and, you know, like that is not the route I go because that's not reality, right? But the reality might be I need a sip of water. And can I do that without feeling guilty for pausing for 30 seconds? And those are important things. They are important
They're
things.
foundational. Like, how can you expect to feel at peace or, you know, not frazzled, if your basic needs aren't being met. I also encounter, people that aren't in the body or have that issue or don't even know what they want. Like the idea of a desire is so foreign to them because they've just gone through life being unable to make those choices, and
Mhm,
they often struggle with this,
mhm.
with not giving themselves water, not being able to listen to their basic to their basic needs. It's so foundational.
Yeah. And so the deeper work here, kind of going back to one of the earlier questions, the deeper work here is it would be very superficial or very surface level if we simply think, well, learn that somatic practice, those exercises, or do the meditation, or yeah, I'm going to start drinking more water. That's very surface level. It's not really addressing, probably there's trauma there and there's deeper stuff there, right? That makes it inaccessible to even fathom the idea that it's okay to have needs, right? So, there's so many levels here. And I think that's where it can get lost if we feel like, oh, yeah, I heard this one thing helps and I'm just going to do the thing, but we're doing it on a very topical level. That's why it doesn't work, right?
And I think there's definitely a connection between. I I feel that a lot of people that go into healing modalities often come from a past where there's trauma, or there's, that need to want to help others is born from somewhere. Not only that, but there's also that post-secondary trauma. I think in regards to this conversation, we're talking about individuals and practitioners preventing that workout or embodying their work, but now they have these other barriers, or maybe they themselves can't listen to those basic signals because of their own personal stuff. So this is also about
Mhm.
addressing that, being a practitioner with that integrity to do our own personal work before asking that of others.
Mhm. Yeah. Because again, you think about how well can you guide somebody if you don't know the modality well, if you're not practicing it so much that it's a practice of your own. And then again, that consuming of information can feel good. Like you said, right? If you went into therapy, let's say, because of your own history, it's going to feel really good to learn all these things because you're making sense of, oh, that's why, right? It feels good. But it can, if it only stays there, now it just becomes a way to avoid doing your own work. And it looks pretty because you've got all these certifications, right? This can also be on, the consumer side, that going from thing to thing to thing, like I'm journaling and I do the meditation and I go to the yoga and I go to the sound bowl and I go, like I'm going to all the things, but I'm not fully present and I'm not fully like connecting deeply, that embodiment work. It's just a really pretty way of avoiding. You're avoiding through just keeping busy.
Yes. I want to let's tackle that one. I think that that's going to hit home for a lot of people. I think before we jump into this, I just want to read out some of these comments because they're really great comments. And if anybody has any questions or anything that you want to add to the conversation, please do. Ancestor Hour podcast says, "This is such truth, and I'm so happy that this conversation is happening. Gracias." And he says, "Gracias for having this plática. Thank you for being here." We have the millennial matriarch. She says, "Snap." So she's snapping. Xochitl says, "So beautiful. A drink of water is a 30-second pause for me." And
Beautiful.
Ancestor Hour just really loves this conversation. Car the Bar says, "So true." So thank you all for the positive feedback. We're so happy that you're here and that this is connecting with you. All right. The question we're talking about the constant consumption. So we did prepare some questions to sort of guide our conversation, but it's flowed very organically. So I'm very happy about that. So the question here was, how can practitioners stay true to their path without succumbing to the pressures of constant consumption and superficial integration? And can we also expand on what superficial integration could look like and what this constant consumption could look like, which you kind of touched upon?
Yeah. So the constant consumption, we use the word consumption just because it just fits with where we are as a society, right? And that can look like going to the conference, attending the workshops, and then expanding it more into like you're listening to all the podcasts, you're on all the TikToks, you're following all the people on, whatever, YouTube, Instagram, and you're just like taking in all this info, the círculos, like you name it, taking in, which is awesome, right? We want to learn. But again, if it just stays there, it's just consumption. And if you're somebody who wants to or is sharing your wisdom, your tools, your medicine, you can look at it this way too. Are you hoarding all this wisdom and knowledge and your own skills and medicine, right?
That's a whole different
Yeah.
that's a whole different
But
topic. But
but
yeah.
right, so we can just kind of see like I'm on my phone all the time. And I think we can tell ourselves I'm learning, I'm growing, I'm learning, right? I'm taking in all this info. But what are you doing with the info once you're bringing that in, right? We've got to do something with it.
It sounds heavy, to be honest. You thinking about, if here you are, this nucleus, and you're attracting, you're consuming all of this, and you just become, I don't know, like how are you channeling? Yeah, someone said boom, like how is this gonna come out? There needs to be a channel. Like one
Yeah.
thing, yeah.
And I think, a curious question would be, where is this coming from for me? Why do I feel like I have to take one more course, one more whatever, right? I can answer personally. For me, like one thing that I have worked on for many years is self doubt, finding my own courage, right? And or I would feel like, no, I still don't know enough. And I'm comparing myself to all these other people. I don't know as much as her. I'm not going to sound like her. And so then let me take another course. Let me read another book. And it really was coming from my own lack of courage and believing in myself that I know enough and I can actually speak about this or share it with a client. So let me take in more, let me take in more, right? So I think checking ourselves too, where is it coming from? What's making me believe I need more info?
Okay, let's take that and bring it to the other side where it's the person who just takes one course, or one class or reads one book and is like, okay, I read this book and now I'm ready to offer it to you all. And part of what we talked about, it was having that integrity or that responsibility, to the craft, truly embodying the work. Good. This is like full circle, embodying the work before offering it to others. Because even going to grad school or even going to school, like, is that, I guess, when Is it enough?
Mm. That's a good question. But yes, that's the full other side, right? You showed up in one workshop and now you turn around and duplicate it. And now you're offering the thing, but you don't know what you're doing. So that's not good either. Because how are you truly, again, with the healing arts that we're looking at, I think the piece that we really have to connect to is just how sacred the work is. And I don't even mean it in a spiritual way, but the responsibility of being across from somebody who's in a very vulnerable place and who is looking for guidance, who's in pain, who can't, you think of when you're really depressed or suicidal or so anxious or whatever's happening, you are not in that mindset to maybe think super, super clearly. You know you need help and you are turning to someone that you trust, whether you just met them, right? It's your first time working with a person. You're turning to someone with so much trust that they're going to guide you in a way that is going to help you. That's a huge responsibility. And we've got to remind ourselves of that. And again, not just therapy, because, you know, I have to undo a lot of stuff in my sessions, even in coaching. People come in and tell me some horror stories about Reiki sessions, limpias, tarot, therapy, coaching, you name it, because this happens. One TikTok does not equal you are now skilled enough to share this thing. And people do that, right? So, like, what is it? Ego? You're like have such a big desire to put yourself out there, but I think that integrity is, let me learn enough so then with respect, with care, I can share this thing.
Yeah. I think it's such a fine line, especially nowadays, because information is so widely available. And that I think that sometimes some of the more traditional routes, I feel like people feel pressured by not being able to dedicate as much time or energy, and certain things do certain things still require the same amount of energy that it did like 50 years ago, back when you would do the apprenticeship, you would learn for 20 years and then be able to offer it. I think the world is moving at such a fast pace where people feel like that it should be faster. And I think to a certain degree, things can be faster because of the tools and the I guess the avenues in which we can learn are a lot more streamlined nowadays. However, it doesn't detract from the idea that you still need to put something into practice, and that if you can't take that course or that training or that whatever it is modality that you fell in love with that you would like to offer and take it home and really practice it before and really embody it before you even attempt to give it out to others. I think that's just like the bare minimum that one should do. I do think that there are ways in which people can practice these things on their own and learn on their own, but there does need to be some sort of criteria, at least a standard where then you're able to offer it to someone else, because the damage that one can cause is it can be irreparable or a lot of work to undo. So how
Mm-hmm.
do you know
Mm-hmm.
I think we got to do better and hold ourselves personally accountable. And it's hard because I think we've all bared witness to this where, we have people come into our practices and next thing you know, they're offering the same thing, but repackaged or not even repackaged. Sometimes it's really, really blatant and that's tough, and that's the world that we're living in right now.
Mm-hmm.
We have some comments. So I don't know if you want to respond to that and then go into the comments or vice versa.
I think, it's a complicated, there's no one answer or like just do this thing, right? Because I think it's finding that middle ground of I'm not so terrified that I'm taking forever to share something because I don't want to mess it up or I don't feel secure. And definitely don't want to go the other route of like, right? So, like, for anybody watching me here, like, there's so much love being poured into this plática right now, right? Like, I'm sending love to everybody watching and everybody who's going to watch, holding space for you. But also, if you want to learn, that you can contact either one of us about how you can work with us versus taking what the tidbits here and now making it something, right? And maybe some of the work there again is about kind of checking ourselves, like, what is making me feel that I need to run with this one thing I heard or this one thing I learned? What is the urgency? Because it feels that way, like there's an urgency of, oh, I watched this thing, now let me turn around, right? But what is the urgency for you? Where is the pressure coming from? And I
But I was
Yeah.
gonna say, if we go back to the body aspect, even now, just like, just taking that breath and like, bringing it back to the body and realizing there isn't pressure. There is no. I think people feel that the time is running out. There isn't enough time to do something. And it's that frazzled energy we talked about earlier.
And we want to do it. We want it now. We want to do it now. Right. So how do we slow down?
Oh, here we have a big comment. Let me
Okay.
get back to these
Yeah, yeah,
comments.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Thank you, everyone. We love that this is so engaging. So I am Daniela says, I think it's about deepening into la medicina. And then she says, yes, sacred. She likes that you mentioned that word. The dark side of the industry, the millennial matriarch says. I am Daniela says, thank you. Mariposa Monarca says, we call that roba altares. When you take one plática or class, then they turn around and sell it.
Mm-hmm.
Roba, roba altares. That's
Cantares.
wow. I am Daniela says consumerism. And then we have El Machetero says tapping into the indigenous perspective of a day one is born could ideally situate the idea of one's true calling in life versus led by an emotional desire to be a healer. Yeah, I
Mm-hmm.
think that's an interesting comment because there's such an appeal, and it's the idea of being a healer or a helper, a curandera, a therapist. The feathers, the drums, is so glamorized and it looks so, it looks beautiful, sure, but it's there's so much more that goes into it, and I think people don't see that. But how can they if we spend all our time like social media? It's a double-edged sword.
And if there is in that connect, again, it's going to come back to how connected are you to yourself so that you can answer for you. Why am I wanting to do this? Why am I being called to this? Just because it's the cool thing right now? Then again, it's at a superficial level, right? There's a disconnection versus something deeper. And that's the personal work.
Yeah, absolutely. I think and Machetero like hit the nail on the head, with and I think he's making reference to the tonali and being tapped into our ourselves, our true selves before all the programming, before I think that's why inner child work is so important. But I think those things could really branch off into other like deep pláticas. But I hope that this won't be the last. I've really enjoyed this. I think that we're running near the end, so I think let's bring this home and and I guess give people a I guess steps. What can they do now? Like now that they can acknowledge, or see these parts, or they're coming face to face with this in their own lives. What are some things that they can do to start their embodiment journey, or how can they connect with the soma, the somatic side of things? What steps can they do?
Mm. There's probably a lot of steps.
Let's make it,
Yeah, it's like where
let's
to begin.
make it accessible.
Um,
What are
yeah.
some accessible things that people can do? Obviously, connect with you, healing with Marisela. I'm gonna make sure she's tagged when I put this on the feed. But how can they start today? What's something that they can do today that can change their day today?
Mhm. And I wonder if some of it is just taking time to getting curious with yourself, right? Like what questions maybe came up for you. And if you are in the healing arts, maybe even kind of getting curious about like, where am I on this journey, right? Where am I on this journey? Am I feeling challenged in any way? And what are those challenges? Do I feel like I have clarity about why I'm doing this work? Because that's going to help guide your next steps, right? So maybe clarity about where you are, where you're feeling challenged. And I think the somatic piece, it comes more to like the who am I and being with myself. Where am I in that journey? Where am I right now in connection to me? Am I a being that lives only here? That's it, right? Am I afraid of my body? Is my body a place that doesn't feel safe? Like, there's so many ways to answer that, but maybe just some self-reflection of where am I in relation to myself. And there's no right, there's no wrong. It just is. And then maybe going back to that one question of how do I want to be? How do I want to feel? Not jumping to solution of but it can't be done, because that's a different question, right? But because if you can at least identify, and it includes I don't know. Beautiful. If you don't know, then that's going to be your step one to try and figure out, right?
And I feel like that feels good. That feels like a good starting place. It's like you have to ask yourself the question first, just to bring it around for full circle. In the asking, and I guess the being able to acknowledge where we are in this current moment, how can this help us prevent burnout?
I think a lot of times we think of burnout just as a lot of work being piled on, and we leave the body out of it, the soma, us, the liveness of our vessel. And I think being able to figure out where we are can give you then question to look at what you need, right? What do I need so I don't burn out? Maybe you're already burnt out, and really exploring, because I think the first thing for all of us, including me, when I felt burnout, I went immediately to the workload, how much work I had. But there's another layer too. It's like how your body is feeling, how connected or disconnected you feel from the work, right? When it no longer matters, where you feel jaded, even being around people. Like there's so much that has already happened, right? And so it's going to be so personal to respond to that. But to prevent burnout, we need not only the balance of that workload, what people are piling on us, but there has to be connection back to you so that you know what you're needing, and you're noticing when you've got to eat, when you've got to rest, when you just need time out in nature to decompress, when you need joy, when you need pleasure, right? So there's so many layers there too. But I'm just going to tie it all back to you got to be in your body. You got to be
Yeah,
connected to
it's
you.
true.
Yeah.
It's foundational. We have one last question here from El Machetero. He says, any book recommendations as well for those who appreciate the cerebral aspect of a healing journey?
Hmm.
I was going to suggest The Body Keeps the Score, but I don't know if you recommend that book or not,
Mhm.
because it's a body.
It's a really good book that does give, a lot of insight into how trauma impacts the body and like stressful experiences. So that, yeah, it's a really good book. For next time, I need to think of some good books that are written by people of color, because I think that's like my mission right now. When we think of somatic practice, the first name or nervous system, the first names that come to mind are like this author for this book, right?
Sorry for suggesting it, but
Yeah. No. It's a good book. It's on my bookshelf too. But then it just reminded me, like, let's expand that too. How do we bring in some authors also of color who are doing the same work so that we can expand that? Right. But yeah, that's a really good book. I think that's a really nice place.
You read in Machichetero's mind. He says that he read that and he says, any recommendations from an indigenous perspective? And then you said it. So he's like,
He's
yes,
like,
read my mind.
yes. Yeah. And part of this is, even, and I think I had shared with you, I had this idea a few like weeks ago of thinking, where are my teachers that are, nervous system somatic teachers that are women of color, men of color too, but women of color, right? And there are none. And so the idea popped in because I thought I need to find her. And then I don't remember if it was in a dream or something. I think it was in a dream. What I heard is you are her. So I don't know if I am or not, but I'm going to keep that message of we also need to find our people, because this medicine does not belong to that doctor who is not indigenous, but that's the name that's going to pop up when you do your research. This medicine, working with the body, the spirit, the energy, this is indigenous medicine, but that's not whose names are popping up. We don't have the names, right? We don't have the book. And so I think some of this,
it's oral tradition. Absolutely.
yeah, some of this is bringing it back to, that's why that connection to self is not coming from a book. It's us. You are the vessel. You are the medicine. You are the secret sauce. We just need someone to guide us back. And it doesn't have to be through the traditional routes, right?
Absolutely. El machetero, he's mentioning that the mascali is a blessing and rejuvenation, and burnout being community as well as the body. Absolutely. There's a lot of indigenous modalities that, even just sitting in a circle, the idea of sitting in the circle, having, your body making that contact with the earth, there's danza. But those aren't the only answers. Is you getting yourself out there, you laying in the dirt, you connecting with nature, being present without your AirPods or, your phone, even we go out there and you're like, oh, this is so beautiful. Let me take a picture. And, for us, some content creators out here like us, sometimes we have to, but do we really have to? So being able to enjoy that and truly just be in the moment. Oh,
so it's going to be presence with, can you still hear me?
yes.
Yeah. Presence with yourself, right? Presence with nature. Someone asked me, I think like 3 clients asked me this yesterday in sessions, like, how do I get my brain to, they wanted some cognitive answer to what we're talking about being in the body. And I told them all, like, what do I do with my brain when I'm trying to notice my body? I think it was. And what I said is, don't think, just feel. That's
Some people
it. Like, don't think, just feel. So maybe that's something you can try. If you're going to go for a walk, don't pull your phone out. Just feel with your eyes, with your ears, right? Your feet on the ground, lay on the grass. All of that is medicine.
Yes. I mean, for the record, I don't always take pictures of everything, but I'm mentioning,
No, but we do.
And but we do. And it's, I think that's also part of our role and our job. And if we didn't do those things, would we be sitting here having this conversation? So there's a time and a place, but we have to practice. I see it all the time going on hikes and there's people with their radios on and I'm just like, it's defeating the purpose.
Yeah.
Last thing, someone mentioned The Four Agreements by Don Miguel Ruiz as a potential book. I wouldn't say necessarily it's about the body, but it mentions the body as one of the pillars.
Yeah.
Or agreements.
I'm gonna give you all a loving little assignment. Instead of listening to your brain, who is right now urgently saying, "Give me a book to read." What if you could very lovingly tell your brain, "We're going to try something different. We're not going to read a book. We're not going to listen to another podcast. We're not going to go on TikTok. We are just going to let ourselves feel and go outside and either feel the sun on your skin or take your shoes off and feel the grass, the dirt, whatever is accessible to you. Anything, like use your senses and just see what that's like. Because the things that you're wanting to learn through the book, your body is the better teacher.
It's so true.
Yeah, the book
Bueno,
is going to keep you here.
she told you. She told you. So we all have some homework. We all have some homework, myself included. So thank you so, so much for this beautiful conversation, for your time, your energy, your wisdom. And what people are saying, good medicine, gracias. And when you do the dishes.
Yeah.
Because they're saying amazing conversation, you did this. So
Thank
I'm so glad
you.
we did this.
You too. Thank you.
Thank you. And I hope that you'll come on again sometime and
Yeah.
we can talk something else. So people are saying they're going to go outside this evening. They're saying thank you. So,
Yes.
bueno,
Yay.
pues que tengas bonito día and drink some water. I hear it's going to be really hot out there, especially out where you are. So,
Yeah.
stay cool. And I'll be posting this on the feed. And remember, everybody, if you love this conversation, like I know you did, give a healing with Marisela a follow, check out her work, sign up for her workshops. She does wonderful work. There's a reason, I hope that she would be this. So I'm glad.
Thank you.
So thank you. Thank you. Have a good day. Bye, Piloncillos.